welcome back to Donington Park and the GT Cup Championship, where our final race of the weekend is about to get underway, although the cars, as you can see, are still here in the paddock. Before we do that, of course, it's the pit stop, the 50-minute pit stop race. Here's a reminder of what happened earlier on in the sprint and, as promised, that podium.
Round 19 of the championship underway at Donington Park. Now the McLaren GT4s getting themselves together. The nose of both cars dip at exactly the same time, and Morgan Tilbrook outbrakes himself, and then as he rejoins, he makes contact with the tail end of the Radical. Seamus Jennings has been caught, and all of a sudden Sam Neary's got a problem. It looks as though it is going to be a win for the GCAT Racing Porsche.
Had a good start. The Mercedes moved away quite rapidly. Had then a good scrap with the McLaren, but I managed to hold him off, and then he disappeared. I think he did a bit of a wide. So then I went a bit lazy and dropped my lap times a bit, and I thought, well, the Mercedes is way in front. But then, blow me, driving around, there's a Merc parked at the side of the road, and I thought, God, P1. So I thought, brilliant, I'll take it easy. But then we were lapping cars, and one lap, a couple of the laps, it cost me 3 or 4 seconds. And I thought, well, that's okay, I'll just stroke it home in P1. And I looked in the rear mirror, and I saw Dylan. And I thought, oh, God.
I saw Seamus was struggling a little bit. I was getting closer and closer. The team came on the radio, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. And lo and behold, I was behind him. So and that was it. Yeah, we had a clean scrap at the end. The last corner I thought was going to get him, but the car just didn't give me any traction. And then, that was P2.
Absolutely delighted. Yeah, it's first time in the GT Cup, and qualifying went very well this morning. I went from 22nd back up to 7th in one lap at the end. It was a very tight session, and the race, we just made a great start. Thanks to all the guys in front, made a good start, and I just hung on to them. And the main competition was from my class, the guy in the Lamborghini and the Ferrari. Unfortunately, there's a car between us on the first couple of laps. I just put my head down, made a little bit of a break, and I just had the sense that I might be able to keep ahead of him, and that's what I did. And I had 10 laps clear racetrack. It was just amazing, you don't get many races that are that enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a good result, especially after a third and a fourth yesterday. It all went wrong, and the car got beaten up, and it was a good result.
Yeah. And how are you feeling going into the pit stop a bit later?
Yeah, well, I'm feeling good actually, because I've no success seconds, because as I said, I got beaten up yesterday. So all things, unless anything dramatic happens, I think I'm in with a shout.
I wasn't sure that was going to happen, to be honest. We had to stop in the back of the grid because it was wet when we qualified, and our car doesn't have any dry race. It's really difficult in the wet. Coming down the back straight, I saw that Nick Phelps had come off, but I knew he was going to get back on in front of me, and I just sort of managed to tuck in behind him as he was carrying on, and I think he was kind of struggling from there on after, and I just stuck right behind him and hassled him into not making another mistake at the hairpin, and I just couldn't believe my luck, and that was it. So,
well, it paid off. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm really happy. First place. It was a good start. Managed to get away quite well, and then pulled quite a big gap to second place. So it was hot, but I'm really happy. Yeah.
The car that I'm driving, they only made 3 of them, and I bought it really as an investment. I have chassis number 1. The other 2 cars have been upgraded to a more newer style and more power and better suspension than my car. So it's the only one left. So I've had to be really, really careful with it because it's worth a bit of money. And it was fantastic to get the car out and race it and win. Obviously the Radical's much quicker, but he's had problems and I haven't. So that is what racing is all about. In order to win, you've got to finish. So that's great, and we now look forward to the pit stop race and see what my Pro can do to catch up with the Radical.
Well, the cars have literally just left the paddock. I can see them heading out, so they'll be forming behind me on the grid in a few moments. Now, There's been some reshuffling going on with this grid, and I'm going to ask Mark for some help with explaining this, because as I understand it, there have been a few sort of last-minute withdrawals. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. Yeah, news just reaching us that, we just heard Paul Bailey talking about he's looking forward to racing with the Radical. Well, I'm afraid the damage caused to the Radical in the sprint race early on means that they have withdrawn. But also, the two cars that were originally scheduled to start on the front row of the grid have also withdrawn. So Sam and Richard Neary are out with gearbox issues. The number 66 McLaren is out, that Morgan Tilbrook got damaged in the race early on, as is the Radical. And also, very sadly, we've lost Jason Garrett in his BMW from the grid as well. So a revised grid is issued, which sees the number 33 Gth Racing Porsche of Seamus Jennings start from pole position, and John Dillon will be alongside Michelle.
Brilliant. Thank you for explaining that. That's actually quite a lot of losses. We don't normally have that many withdrawals, do we?
No. I mean, two of them are mechanical issues, and the other two are a result of accident damage. So there's a combination of factors that have created that. And I also noticed, Michelle, you won't be able to see it because it'll be over the wall to your left at the moment.
Yes.
But also the Webb's BMW is still in the pit lane at the moment, so that could
Who's
be
that?
a pit.
Sorry, I missed that one, Mark. Sorry, it cut out.
The Webb's BMW. The Webb's BMW. No, they used to have a BMW. They've got a Lamborghini now. The Webb's light blue Lamborghini looks as though it's starting from the pit lane. Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay. So, yeah, there are, like I said, a few changes to this grid, and they should, in fact, yes, they're just all starting to come through now. So just scoot over here and we'll see our front runners coming through shortly. Seamus, of course, who had a great sprint race earlier on when we spoke to him in Parc Fermé, and John Dillon, and they're going to be side by side here at the front row of the grid now, which I'm sure they're going to be quite pleased about. This being our endurance race, so this will be an interesting run for Charles Clark, our new GTH driver, who we spoke to a little bit earlier on. He's back in, well, he was row 7, but he might have actually bumped forward a bit due to those withdrawals. I'll get Mark to check that for me. But this will be an sort of interesting race for him because, of course, he's used to the sprint races, but the endurance is something he wanted to work on. So he'll be heading out with his pro driver in this particular race. Here we go. Who's that coming through now? So we've got our front runners. Mark, could you let us know about that GTH? Also Josh Jackson as well, who's the group leader for that, because I know they were on row 7 of the grid.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Charles Clark was due to line up on the inside of the 7th row of the grid with Josh Jackson alongside him, so 13th and 14th positions respectively. But because of the withdrawals, it means that Charles Clark moves up onto the 5th row of the grid. He's in 10th.
Oh, great.
Josh Jackson will be on the 6th row in 11th position, yeah.
Oh, well, Charles will be very pleased with that. I know he's enjoying his weekend.
Well, Charles will be really pleased with that, and he's definitely enjoying his weekend because he did take that number 74 Porsche Cayman GT4 to a group win earlier on in the sprint race, and that's the first time he's had the group win this weekend in GTH.
Yeah, he's very, very happy lad. Well, here we go. Here's our front row now. Of course, John Dillon and Phil Quaife are going to be in this one because, remember, it's 2 drivers. For most part, some drivers are by themselves, but this is the pit stop race. And then we have Seamus Jennings, who is to my right. So maybe, Mark, you can take us through the full grid, but also explain a bit about how the pit stop works.
Absolutely, Michelle. Thank you very much. So the cars are there on the grid. Let's bring you through the grid. We'll tell you about the starting drivers, and we should be able to pick up on the success seconds that everybody has as well. Pit stop window, and when it opens up. So the grid, I think, will be able to head towards us in a few moments. Might be able to get the graphic up and have a quick look at the way that it's lined up. So it was quite late that there was an amended grid issued. So it was only literally about a few seconds ago where we saw the grid issued. So fantastic job. Here's the grid then. Let's guide you through it for this race, the final race this weekend for the GT Cup Championship. Seamus Jennings will be starting from pole position, and alongside will be John Dillon. So Seamus Jennings and John Dillon on the front row of the grid. Row 2 of the grid is number 113, Tom Webb, but I've seen that car in the pit lane, and number 25, which is going to be David Shaw. Now the car on the front row of the grid, Seamus Jennings on pole. Here it is now. Seamus Jennings had an extra 10 seconds to spend in the pit lane. John Dillon has nothing. Tom Webble has nothing, but the car of David Shaw has an extra 10 seconds. Row 3 of the grid is where we see Charlotte Gilbert, no additional time penalties to worry about, and Andre Borodin sits alongside, who is also off scratch. The 4th row of the grid, car number 28, Paul Bailey. That has got an extra 15 seconds to spend in the pit lane, and alongside it is Roy Millington, who's got an extra 20 seconds. And row 5 of the grid is number 35, Nick Phelps, will start an extra 20 seconds, and alongside is 74, the Group GTH leading car of Charles Clark. Row 6 is number 1, Josh Jackson, an extra 20 seconds to spend in the pit lane, and alongside is James Simons, who's got an extra 15. And row 7 of the grid is Simon Orange and Tom Rawlings, with row 8 being Craig Wilkins and Charlotte Gilbert, who's got an extra 10 seconds. The 9th row of the grid is Steve Ruston, who lines up alongside Mark Hopton, with row 10 being Ian Duggan, who will start with an extra 15 seconds, and alongside is number 90, Mike Price. Row 11, David Holloway, an extra 15 seconds, and Stuart Lynn alongside, with row 12 being Ian Campbell, who's got an extra 10 seconds, and number 82, James Guess, who's got an extra 20. Row 13 sees Tim Docker line up alongside Carl Cavers. Row 14 is the number 14 car, which is going to be started by Philip Carter, and alongside is number 22, which is Richard Mason. The 15th row is 212, Stephen Walton, and car number 17, which is going to be Patrick Collins, who will start. And off the back of the grid, with an extra 10 seconds to spend in the pit lane, will be number 6, started by Alex Stevenson. And that gives you the grid for this final race this weekend here at Donington Park, round 20 of the 2021 GT Cup Championship, with still a further weekend of racing to come in just 2 weeks' time at Snetterton, where we return to Norfolk. We were there for rounds 7, 8, 9 and 10 in June on the Snetterton 300 circuit. We will bring the 2020 Championship to a conclusion at that same circuit on the same configuration as well. Now, the pit window for this race, because it is the pit stop race, we see it split into 2 separate groups. So Group 1 is for those cars that run in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC, and they will be pitting over the course of this race between the 29th and 35th minute of the race. So in other words, 21 minutes to go to 15 minutes to go. So they will be the second batch of cars to pit. The first batch of cars to pit will be those that run in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA, and they will pit between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race, i.e. between 26 and 21 minutes to go is the way that it will work. So we're about to get this final race for the GT Cup Championship underway here at Donington Park. Seamus Jennings, fresh from a win in the GCAT Racing Porsche earlier on today, but an extra 10 seconds that car will have to spend in the pit lane relative to John Dillon's car, who lines up alongside it. So Seamus Jennings will give way to Greg Caton, John Dillon will give way to Phil Quaife, but the Lambo has got 10 seconds in hand in reality already. Lights go out and we get the race underway. Both front row men match each other for pace as they head up towards Redgate Corner for the first time. Is the Porsche going to lead the race? Well, John Dillon, I think, was looking to try and brave it out around the outside. Paul Bailey has slotted himself through into 3rd position at the wheel of the very fast starting Group GTO McLaren Can-Am, as he was suggesting, a very unique car indeed, one of only 3 ever built, and the only one that still remains in original specification. Down through the old hairpin they'll go. Group GT3 car leads and is second. Group GTO car is there in 3rd at the moment. And 4th, I think, that looked like it might have been Nick Phelps possibly that was there in 4th position. We'll have to wait and get that confirmed, because I think Nick Phelps, if that's the case, has had a really good start. And thankfully, yeah, Tom Webb is out behind the wheel of the Lamborghini. That's the car that started from the pit lane. And, well, it's going to have to be another one of those stunning Tom Webb drives. We've already seen 2 of those this weekend, where he's worked his way from the tail end of the field right into contention. So the leading 2 up towards the braking area for the S's. Paul Bailey there in what is 3rd position. For 4th place, that is Warren Gilbert, who has to give way and allow the car of David Shaw to take up 4th position. Warren Gilbert drops to 5th, and Nick Phelps actually is there in 6th place, the second of the 2 Porsches. So in towards the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin they'll go. Everybody filing their way round neat and tidily. No real issues, I don't think, for anybody on this first lap of the race, but there's still a long, long way to go in this 50-minute race, and already there is Tom Webb. Now, that car started from the pit lane, so there are 31 cars on the revised grid. It'll be interesting to see where Tom Webb comes through at the end of the first lap of the race. Nose to tail for the lead, still with Seamus Jennings hanging on to it. We saw Seamus having a great race with John Dillon in part 1 of the day today, which was the sprint race. And we're going to see a good race for them this time through, I would have thought as well. John Dillon pushing hard, but runs a little bit wide that time, heading out of the old hairpin. That drops him away from the race leader. Tom Webb up to 26th in this race. from 31st, so good progress made. And into the pit lane with damage, I'm afraid to say. It's been a rotten weekend for James Guess, who has got tangled up in a couple of things. One, he was trying to avoid a spinning car and caused damage to the underneath of the car on the curbs, and that is him out very early on in the sprint race, sharing with Tom Canning for this weekend. He'll be back with Darren Turner, I think, is the information I was given earlier on, when they head towards Snetterton. Now, we've got waved yellow flags in the S's, which suggests that something has occurred on lap number 1. Now, we know of James Guess's problems, but is there anybody else that hasn't come through? Yeah, I think maybe Mike Price has not come through at the wheel of the number 90 Balfe Motorsport prepared McLaren, so he could well be in the gravel trap potentially at the S's. No obvious signs of the car around the track. The squabble's still continuing as we head up towards the conclusion of lap number 2. Seamus Jennings leading John Dillon. Both of those cars running in Group GT3. Group GTO, the orange McLaren, is leading that group by Paul Bailey. And Group GTC is side by side for the leader racers. Warren Gilbert looks to return the favour on the car of David Shaw. Can't quite squeeze the Lamborghini through, so Group GTC still being headed by David Shaw from Warren Gilbert, whilst the Group GTB leading Porsche of Nick Phelps sits behind. And the reason that those two Porsches are in different groups is because the car of David Shaw is the newer generation Porsche. That of Nick Phelps is a generation older. So that's why one sits in Group GTC, one sits in Group GTB. So Porsche, Lamborghini, Porsche fighting over what is 4th, 5th and 6th. The number 25 Porsche still just leading the number 9 Lamborghini as they fight for top honours in Group GTC. Group GTB leading car number 35 with its pink flashes of Nick Phelps sitting behind. Not that far off him is André Borodin, who is at the wheel of Group GT3. McLaren. Now, this is the opportunity for Warren Gilbert. Gets a good run in the Lamborghini. You see the nose of the car dip as he heads in towards the S's. He gets the car stopped in time and gets cleanly off the corner. So, job done, place gained. Group lead it is for Warren Gilbert. Now, was that whilst they were still under yellows there, though? Because that was an area of the circuit earlier on where there were waved yellows because of what I think is the stricken car of Mike Price. Now, if that were under yellows, Warren Gilbert's going to have to give the place back, I'm afraid, or if not, he'll incur some sort of penalty. But that was if it was under yellows. So Gilbert through. He is now up into 4th position. Roy Millington at the wheel of the red Ferrari looking to try and come into the mix as well. He's closed up to the coattails of André Borodin's car, the Greystone GT McLaren, running 4 Group GTH McLarens, plus this Group GT3 McLaren this weekend. So Greystone, a new team to GT Cup for this season, bringing many drivers through from in their performance track days that they organise throughout the UK into racing. And I've got to say, doing a really good job of making a fantastic impression as well in GT Cup this year. So up towards McLean's Corner, 45 minutes to go. So it's still going to be 15 minutes before we see the first of the pit stop windows anywhere near open. And remember, it will be today, the way it works is that the Group 2 cars will be stopping first. So in other words, those in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA, as Warren Gilbert now works his way through and past Paul Bailey's McLaren. So Lamborghini now up into 3rd position overall in the race. Paul Bailey down to 4th, but still leading Group GTO. So neither Lamborghini nor McLaren, with that shuffle of order, have actually gained any further championship points. The fight of the 2 Porsches. Now, they are in different groups, remember. David Shaw's car, which is the first of those Porsches, is in Group GTC. Group GTB is Nick Phelps that sits behind. And the thumbs up there was, I think, Mo Ritson that gave the thumbs up. So over the start-finish line go the squabbling pair for 5th and 6th position. The number 1 orange McLaren coming towards this Group GTH leader at the moment. So that's the Group GTH leading car that's just passed us there. And for Tom Webb at the wheel of the light blue Lamborghini, still making progress as well. So that car was in 16th position as it came over the start-finish line, and I think will now be in 15th place as it's ahead of Simon Orange, who still continues in that orange Ginetta to lead Group GTA in the early stages of this one. So down through the old hairpin. Tom Webb, remember, from a pit lane start, so in theory 31st place rather than 3rd on the grid as it would have been. But we've seen him do this a couple of times this weekend, just carve his way through the order. And on one occasion yesterday, after a really strong drive in the pit stop race, it was a puncture when the pit window had closed and the car was in the hands of his brother. Just a puncture that caused their retirement, otherwise it would have been a stellar result for them. Back to the lead, and Seamus Jennings has still not shaken away John Dillon. Ross Wiley, who is poised to take over the McLaren Can-Am from Paul Bailey, looks on. Up towards Redgate Corner. Now they're on lap number 6 at the moment. John Dillon within touching distance has just set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 32.608 for John Dillon, as he starts to turn the screw and ask a few more questions of Seamus Jennings. And remember, both of these drivers will hand over to their respective pros as and when the pit window opens. The way it works in GT Cup is that the pro driver cannot start the pit stop race. It has to be the AM driver in reality, where you've got a pro-am combination. Now this is the lead of Group GTH coming towards us, the orange McLaren, followed by the number 26 Tom Rawlings driven McLaren. And then Charles Clark not far away. John Dillon still desperate to try and see whether there's an opening to thrust the Lamborghini through and ahead of the Porsche. But at the moment, it is still Porsche from Lamborghini. It's another Lamborghini, but the GTC leading car of Warren Gilbert that sits behind. And the reason the Lamborghinis are in different groups is the one we're looking at now, the number 61 car, is a full GT3 specification car, whereas Warren Gilbert's, it might look similar, but the rear wings and the aero on it will be different because that is built to Super Trofeo specification. You can see a big sort of air intake into the engine on the Super Trofeo spec car of Warren Gilbert. GTH, as ever, is providing some great battles. Carl Cavers under pressure from David Holloway. Just up the road is the number 23 car of Ian Campbell. Trying to get in on the mix is the Group GTA Ian Duggan-driven Fox Motorsport Ginetta. And just behind him, that's Tim Docker, I think, at the wheel of the number 78 McLaren. That's just at the tail end of that shot. Yes, it is. You can see the strange coloured wheels on Tim Docker's car. So this is a great little fight that's going on. Goes from Charlotte Gilbert all the way back to what will be Tim Docker, with a mixture of Group GTB cars, Group GTA cars and Group GTH cars. And the car that's getting picked off here is Craig Wilkins, the number 80 Scott Sport prepared Ginetta in the hands of the man from the West Midlands. Loses out to Carl Cavers, will lose out to David Holloway, who sort of tries to lean on him coming out of the corner and gains the place. There's Phil Quaife looking on. He will take over the car that's currently in second place, that's in the hands of John Dillon, come part 2 of the race. And you can see he got the headset on, so always in communication with John Dillon, giving him an idea as to what he needs to do or what deltas he needs to hit or where he's stronger than the car ahead. And at the moment he is stronger than the car ahead by 1/4 of a second on this lap in the first sector. John Dillon has just set the best first sector that anybody has done in the race so far in his pursuit of Seamus Jennings, and he's having to do that just to keep up with the race leader. 39 minutes to go, so still a while before we see the pit window open. More cars picked off by the charging light blue Lamborghini in the hands of Tom Webb. That's the Group GTH leading car of Josh Jackson that he's just gone through and passed. And now for Tom Webb, the next car ahead is going to be a car that he can try and take a place away from in terms of the group position, because that Group GTC number 113 Lamborghini was 5th in its group. It's catching the 4th place car in its group, number 41 James Simons, who I think he might be able to squeeze his way through and past here. Yes, he does. James Simons stays out of the way, moves off line, through goes Tom Webb, following him through goes Josh Jackson. So that will put Tom Webb now up into, I think, 9th position from, remember, this is 31st he's come from, and he's only on lap number 8 at the moment. So through and over the start-finish line goes Tom Webb. He's got the Group GTH leading McLaren right behind him, but of course the more powerful Lamborghini pulls away in a straight line, and also managing to get back past again goes James Simons at the wheel of the number 41 car, the more powerful car. In the hands of James Simons, some of the quicker Group GTH cars are able to keep up with that Group GTC Lamborghini. James pedalling it as quickly as he can. Back to the Group GTH and Group GTA battles. Now this is number 80 car of Craig Wilkins, and look in his mirrors, Ian Duggan is right behind. There's Philip Carter, who joins the ranks for this weekend, back with Greystone, one of the 4 cars that Greystone are running. That's the extra car they've slotted in for this weekend. Michael Broadhurst is the pro that shares with him. Michael making his return to the GT Cup since a one-off outing with Fox Motorsport a season or so ago. There's Patrick Collins as well at the wheel of his Orange Racing with JMH prepared Ginetta. But Charlotte Gilbert is doing a really good job here of hanging on to 17th place. She's got Mark Hopton right behind her, then Ian Campbell, then Carl Cavers, then what will be David Holloway. So with 4 GTH cars all queuing up behind. Now all of these cars behind her are lesser powered, but they're about 25 years newer than the Marcos that sits ahead, and the Marcos doesn't have any electrical gizmos on it really, whereas the cars behind, they've got ABS, they've got traction control, they've got better aero probably than the Marcos, but the Marcos has got a bit more grunt. And this is Ian Campbell going wheel to wheel with Mark Hopton, the 2 Greystone GT teammates, side by side on the way into the corner. Not quite side by side on the way out, but I think there will be again by the time they get up towards the braking area for Goddard's. Is Ian Campbell going to brave it out on the inside line? Is Mark Hopton going to try and squeeze him to try and hang on to the place? Sensible driving by both, and they are pretty much side by side on the way out of the corner. It's just allowed Charlotte Gilbert to escape a little bit. The 2 teammates are still side by side when they get towards Redgate Corner. Mark Hopton has the inside line, so he should be able to hang on to it, and indeed does just hang on to it over the newly liveried number 23 car of Ian Campbell for this weekend. Carl Cavers in the Veluga prepared Porsche just sitting behind, then David Holloway at the wheel of his Aston Martin is not too far away. This is the car that leads Group GTA at the moment, Simon Orange. Headlamp missing, scuffs down the side. He's had a busy old weekend as Simon Orange, but his ever is smiling away. And at the moment is doing enough so as to lead the group, and that's important for him for the championship Group GTA. Simon Orange is the championship leader in Group GTA. Josh Jackson in the sister car to it is the championship leader in Group GTH. Fair to say the new team for this year, Orange Racing, have had a really mega season. Now Philip Carter coming under pressure, we can see in the background. Mark Hopton still looking to try and hang on to his position despite the attack that's coming behind continually from Ian Campbell. There goes Philip Carter, he's got someone else behind him, and now back towards the race lead, as they were really. Seamus Jennings still doing a stellar job of making sure that John Dillon is not able to open the door and squeeze his way through. We've got less than 10 minutes now before the pit window will open, and remember it opens for the lesser powered cars today. First day of the weekend, it's always the more powerful cars that pit first. The second day of the weekend, where we've got pit stop races, it's the lesser powered cars that pit first, and those with more power pit second. So Group GTB, Group GTH, Group GTA are in first, and then when their pit window closes, in comes Group GTO, Group GT3, Group GTC. Safely through the traffic, Alex Stevenson in the Century Motorsport Ginetta stays well and truly out of harm's way, lets the leading 2 cars go through, so that drops the number 6 Ginetta off the lead lap, and the gap between first and second is now just under 9/10 of a second really. So Seamus Jennings still working hard, as is the number 77 car of Mark Hopton, currently 6th in Group GTH, 17th overall, but still trying to unlock the door is Ian Campbell. And has he got the run this time as they head up towards Coppice Corner? The 2 of them lean on each other, but they still are in the same order. Really good driving from both teammates. One thing they won't want to do is take each other out. Remember, they really are pretty new to motorsport, these guys, but Carl Cavers is looking to try and get a run in the Porsche. Won't do so as they head in towards the S's. Cavers, though, will need to get quickly off the corner because he's got David Holloway and the Aston Martin trying to draw himself alongside, and David Holloway will have the inside line if he can make it stick for the Melbourne hairpin. 2 wheels on the grass, straight into the side of Carl Cavers, who is then inadvertently pushed in towards Ian Campbell's car there, and that was David Holloway just making a mistake. I think he realised he'd made a mistake, but I think it's done the radiator on the Porsche, it's done the rear toe link on Ian Campbell's car. Now it's tyre rub on the Porsche. David Holloway's car has got front damage as well, and into the pit lane comes Carl Cavers, into the pit lane comes David Holloway, and I think in the background of the shot with a broken rear toe link will come Ian Campbell's stricken Greystone car, I would have thought, before too much longer. Yeah, he's limping his way into the pit lane as the race leaders go past. Now this has happened before the pit window opens for these cars, so they are still, even if they can get the car repaired, going to have to pit. But I think that's going to be it, I'm afraid, for Ian Campbell's car. You can see it crabbing down the pit lane, and I don't think they'll be able to do anything with that. You can see the huge dint in the side of Carl Cavers' door as well, the number 50. Without question, there'll have been no intent from David Holloway, but I think he outbraked himself, and then once he was on the grass, he was pretty much a passenger from there. There was not a lot he could do, but unfortunately cannoned straight into the side of Carl Cavers, who then, a bit like a domino effect, wasn't it, went straight into the side of Ian Campbell. 3 damaged cars, 1 small mistake. No mistake as yet, though, from Seamus Jennings, who is having to drive overtime here to try and keep John Dillon behind. Now, John Dillon's, I think, is doing a really good job here. He doesn't need to take the lead of the race. Oh, right, there's David Holloway's car. It's definitely done the radiator on that car, so I'm afraid that car is done for the weekend. The Century Motorsport Aston Martin. All the coolant sitting on the floor of the pit lane. And, yeah, John Dillon doing a really sensible job, because as long as he stays right on the tailpipes of Seamus Jennings, you know the race is going to come to the Lamborghini. Now, there's traffic ahead. That presents opportunities. Seamus Jennings is flashing his lights to forewarn the traffic that needs to come through, but that Porsche that leads is going to have to spend an extra 10 seconds in the pit lane compared to the Lamborghini. So once we cycle through the pit stops, arguably, when Phil Quaife takes over the Lambo and Greg Caton takes over the Porsche, Phil Quaife should be ahead. They should swap over the course of the pit stops with the success seconds that are being applied to the Porsche. So, onto the top of Hollywood. Moving neatly out of the way goes Russ Collins at the wheel of the Orange Racing number 17 Ginetta. He's having a good little fight, actually, with Stephen Walton, it will be, in the Make It Happen Racing Ginetta. They'll be fighting away for group position as well. So that would be for 4th and 5th in Group GTA. Something like 24th and 25th overall in the race, that will be for. Next of the cars that needs dealing with will be Philip Carter's number 14 Group GTH McLaren. That will be in 9th position overall. And what we're looking at now is for going to be Nick Phelps, who's there in 6th position, Andre Borodin in 7th, Roy Millington in the Ferrari in 8th place, and Tom Webb in 9th place, about to try and gain another position in group as well, because the Ferrari runs in Group GTC, as does the light blue Lamborghini. The far more experienced Tom Webb works his way pretty easily past Roy Millington, who is still in the infancy of his motor racing career. So Ferrari 488 Evo that runs to European Challenge spec, passed by Super Trofeo spec Lamborghini. And now the next of the cars for Tom Webb that he's going to have in the crosshairs is going to be the GT3 McLaren of Andre Borodin. Getting past that car is only going to net him an additional position in the race. It won't net the car any extra positions in the group, because the Group GTC Lamborghini is closing in on the Group GT3 McLaren, which is fighting away with the Group GTB Porsche. So Porsche, McLaren, Lamborghini, all in different groups. Now, pit window is only a matter of minutes away now from opening for the Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA cars. And they've got, well, only 5 minutes of pit window to come in, so it's not a long window, so you don't necessarily have to come in on the first lap, but by the time you get to lap 2, you probably need to. By lap 3, you absolutely need to come into the pit lane, otherwise you'll run out of time. And is Tom Webb going to pick off Andre Borodin's car here, the new to GT Cup this weekend, Greystone GT3 McLaren is about to lose out, I'm afraid. Through goes Tom Webb, another place gained. Remember, that car, the number 113 Lamborghini, should have started 3rd on the grid. It started from the pit lane, i.e. 31st position. And that would have meant that it still would have not started right behind the 30th position car. Slight mistake though going in towards the old hairpin there. Almost cost Tom Webb for a split second. So yeah, had to wait for all of the cars to go through before the red lights at the end of the pit lane would have gone to green. So there was already a bit of catch up to do to even catch the pack. And now that Lamborghini is up into 7th position and is hot on the heels of the Group GTB leading Porsche of Nick Phelps, who is going to try and hang on to the overall position, but the Lamborghini has got the inside line through Coppice. The extra power should tell on the straight, and it should be able to work its way past the Porsche, and I think Andre Borodin is desperately trying to work his way past that Porsche as well, but isn't quite going to be able to do it. So another place gained by Tom Webb. It's been so good to see the Webb brothers back in the GT Cup Championship. They were so competitive a couple of seasons ago. Now, for the Group GTH leader, the #1 car of Josh Jackson, he will hand the car over to Michael O'Brien, but look at the gap. McLaren is being hounded by McLaren, and that is Tom Rawlings in the Paddock Motorsport car that's not too far behind. There's another McLaren that runs. Oh, and off the road there went the car of Charles Clark. That was third in Group GTH, but ran off the road, and that has allowed the #44 McLaren of Steve Ruston to squeeze through. Now, Charles Clark is now under pressure from the next of the cars that is sitting behind, and I think that'll be the car of Tim Docker, I think, will it? Let's have a quick look. Yes, it is. Yeah, no, it's not. It's the #21 car that sits behind. And that is going to be another car that is for position. That will be Stuart Lynn, who's having a great outing this weekend for Optimum Motorsport in his first weekend of racing in the GT Cup. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth of Group GTH all together in the same shot. McLaren, Porsche and McLaren. Those are the top 5 cars in GTH. And remember, Group GTH is for the GT4 homologated cars. So down through the Craner curves, in towards the old hairpin. 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th and 15th places, but more importantly, 1st to 5th in the group. And after that small mistake from Charles Clark, he'll need to make sure he keeps things clean now, because #21, Stuart Lynn, is not that far behind. They had a new fastest lap of the race, as you briefly saw flash up there, for the race leader Seamus Jennings last time through, 1 minute 32.116. He's actually now pulled 2 3/4 seconds away from John Dillon. Now, the Lamborghini that lies ahead of the quintet of Group GTH cars is that of James Simons. That is for position. James Simons is in 10th position. Josh Jackson is in 11th, but is under increasing pressure from Tom Rawlings, who is now looking to consider drawing himself alongside, but I think it would be more a wide line in to take a narrower line out. In the background, Nick Phelps dives for the pit lane, because the pit window is now open. So those cars running in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA can now all dive for the pit lane on this lap. It's the first time they've been able to do so, and the pit window opens for them with 26 minutes of the race to go, and we see another raft of cars all heading for the pit lane as well that time through, which included the Group GTH leading car, I think. Yeah, in comes #1. So that is Josh Jackson to hand over to former British GT racer Michael O'Brien. Into the pit lane comes Tom Rawlings to hand over to Mo Ritson. So to a stop comes the Orange Racing McLaren. The Paddock Motorsport car follows it in on the same lap. A change of front right tyre for the car, which is the tyre that probably receives less load than any here at Donington Park. Now, Tom Webb, the progress he is still looking to continue. He is now caught up with Paul Bailey's McLaren Can-Am. Paul waving him by there. Sensible thing from Paul. He's more interested in the win in Group GTO, so there's no need for him to try and hold up Tom Webb, and particularly with the value of that McLaren as well. It's fantastic to see it out. Wonder whether we might see it out again at Snetterton, because we've seen Paul out in a Ferrari this year, Group GTO, and a Brabham, and this is now the McLaren Can-Am. He's hoping to be back at the wheel of the Brabham, but parts are on order for it. They haven't been able to arrive in time for this weekend, and even if they arrive now, talking to the team, I think the team are against it to do the work they need to do to it to get it out for Snetterton. That's a spin for Roy Millington, so Roy's had a quick rotation. Now that car was running in 9th position, and he's going to drop down to, I think, yeah, further down through. Will actually gain a place. Despite the spin, it gains a place. That's because other cars are now in the pit lane. But for Roy Millington, that will have cost him time. Back out of the pit lane goes #1. That's now in the hands of Michael O'Brien. Number 77 in the pit lane, that is going to be Adam Carroll, former A1 GP champion and a BAR test driver for some years. Takes over that car. Into the pit lane comes Stuart Lynn to hand over to father Ron Lynn. Number 44 comes in as well, which is Steve Russon to hand over to John Whitehouse. Whilst the overall race leader still has to wait patiently for their pit window to open in the more powerful cars. Seamus Jennings now only has 0.9 of a second gap between himself and John Dillon, who has brought the gap down again over the course of the last lap by 1.4 seconds. In comes the Group GTA leader, that's Simon Orange. But this is the lead of the race, and from Seamus Jennings having a comfortable lead, it looks as though John Dillon has worked hard to try and catch back up with the Porsche. Craig Wilkins heads for the pit lane. Great stint by Charlotte Gilbert. She heads to the pit lane to hand over to Neil Huggins, who rejoins the championship for this weekend. Patrick Collins is in to hand over to Russ Lindsay, and car number 212, which is in the hands of Stephen Walton, is in to hand over to Chris Hart. Stephen wasn't driving yesterday. Chris drove solo. So up towards the braking area for the S's. Remember, the Porsche has an extra 10 seconds to spend in the pit lane relative to the Lamborghini. So we should see them swap over come the pit window. And the pit window for these cars is not open yet, so we shouldn't see either of them head into the pit lane this time through. But by the time they come over the start-finish line next time around, the pit window should be open. Great glow of the brake disc on the Porsche there. So hard is Seamus Jennings having to work. He's about to catch up with Michael O'Brien, and that is the number 1 McLaren that was leading Group GTH until it pitted and should still be leading it once everybody's cycled through the pit stops. Briefly, I think that will delay John Dillon whilst he just has to wait to squeeze the throttle a little bit more. This is Warren Gilbert, who still sits there in 3rd position currently and leads Group GTC. And this is the car that's 4th, but is about 16 seconds behind Warren Gilbert. Now for Tom Webb, no additional time penalties to worry about in the pit lane. There isn't either for Warren Gilbert, so Tom Webb is going to have to keep driving his socks off if he wants to close in on the group leader and claim a win in Group GTC, and that, I think, is a tall order, really, despite the fact it's been a mega drive so far from Tom Webb. And, of course, it's still got the pit stop to do. There's no driver change taking place in either of the cars. Warren Gilbert will remain behind the wheel. Tom Webb will remain behind the wheel in this one. And with neither of them having any additional time penalties, it all comes down to pure pace. And the last lap from Tom Webb, 1 minute 33.9. The last lap from Warren Gilbert, 1 minute 33.7. Now the pit window is open this time through, so we could potentially see Seamus Jennings and John Dillon dive for the pit lane. So let's wait and see. There's a bit of traffic just ahead of them. Are we going to see the Porsche head towards the pit lane? There's a squeal of brakes ahead of them as well, as off the circuit almost goes Simon Orange. The race leaders go by, and Seamus Jennings stays out, but John Dillon comes in to hand over to Phil Quaife. So into the pit lane comes John Dillon. Roy Millington is in, ready to hand over to Benny Simonson. James Simons is in as well, ready to hand over to Tim Morley. So to a halt, parking at 45 degrees, comes the Scott Sport prepared Lamborghini. Continuing in the lead of the race comes Seamus Jennings. Now Seamus is just going to have to push as hard as he can here. Now he's not having to worry about anything his mirrors. He might be able to perhaps lap a little bit quicker, but there's traffic up the road to deal with. And that will be Ron Lynn at the wheel of the Optimum Motorsport number 21 McLaren. Ron, who's raced in the Ginetta Racing Drivers Club Series and the G40 Cup in the past, where he's eligible for the Chairman's Cup, partnered with his son Stuart for this weekend in their first weekend of racing in the GT Cup. I think they've enjoyed themselves. I hope we'll see them back as well. So that's dealt with by Seamus Jennings. The pit stop has almost finished for the Scott Sport team, and there, I'm afraid, are problems, and that is going to be Chris Hart that's taken over the wheel of that Ginetta. Phil Quaife heads into the race. Car bouncing off the pit lane speed limiter, and the Ginetta, has sort of failed out on track, really, as it's come out of the Melbourne hairpin. It's clearly had some sort of issue. Now, I think we'll see Seamus Jennings dive for the pit lane this time through. Yes, he does. In the background of the shot, Seamus Jennings dives for the pit lane, just as Phil Quaife comes out of the pit lane. Now, those are the two cars that were fighting for position, but remember, the Porsche has an extra 10 seconds to spend in the pit lane relative to the Lamborghini. So, in reality, by the time we've got through all of the pit stops, that number 61 Lamborghini of Phil Quaife should be, if all things pan out, in the lead of the race overall. This is another great battle in Group GTH, and this is for the lead of it, because Mo Ritson is under enormous pressure now from number 74, which is Ben Barker, whilst Phil Quaife sneaks his way through and past both of them. That was the lead fight in Group GTH, that would be. And as they head down the straight, yeah, Mo Ritson is going to have his hands full here. Former Porsche Carrera Cup GB racer and Porsche Super Cup racer Ben Barker sweeps his way around the outside in that, well, almost iconically liveried car, isn't it? The colours, very reminiscent of the colours that Porsche used to run in the World Sports Car Championship in their 956s and 962s over the course of the 1980s. But Ben Barker picks up the lead in Group GTH. Mo Ritson at the wheel of the Paddock Motorsport car down into second position in the group, and that will put him now down to 12th overall in this race. Back out of the pit lane comes Greg Caton, having taken over from Seamus Jennings. Now, where's the car going to feed out relative to Phil Quaife? I'd imagine Quaife's already through. Yes, he is. So Phil Quaife is already through, and Seamus Jennings is going to feed out exactly where. There goes Benny Simonson through. He's going to feed out in second place, I think, by the time we get our way through all of the pit stops. So Phil Quaife already down in towards the bottom of the old hairpin. Will be reasserted back to the top of the list next time through. So because the Porsche came over the start-finish line the lap prior ahead of the Lamborghini, that's why the timing tower to the left is showing Phil Quaife down in fourth and Greg Caton in the lead. But by the time next time they come over the start-finish line, we should see that number 61 car go to the top of the times. This car here in second position, puff of dust ahead of it as somebody had a minor off around the circuit. Hopefully they've scrambled their way back onto the tarmac. And then once the race has settled down a bit, we can pick up on where the battles are. Now, Phil Quaife, looking as though on his first flying lap, is destined to set the fastest lap of the race by the look of things. 1 minute 31.641 is the fastest lap of the race that we've had so far. Phil Quaife was on his out lap last time through, but he's already gone purple in the first and the second sector, and as he comes over the start-finish line now at the wheel of the number 61 car, there he goes to the top of the times, and guess what? New fastest lap as well. 1 minute 30.804 for Phil Quaife. I did say, as long as John Dillon stuck with that Porsche, the race would come to the Scott Sport Lamborghini, and absolutely that is exactly what has happened. It leads by 12.239 seconds now from Greg Caton's Porsche in second place. Warren Gilbert is third and leads Group GTC at the moment at the wheel of the number 9 Lamborghini. Fourth is number 25, which is David Shaw. And fifth, I think, will be Tom Webb after his stunning drive through the field at the wheel of the Lamborghini. So there goes Phil Quaife for the 22nd time the Lamborghini heads round through Coppice Curve and on towards the start, on towards the exhibition straight as such. Now, Phil Quaife and John Dillon have done every single round of the GT Cup Championship so far, but they have not had as yet an overall race win. They could be on for race win number 1 of the season here at Donington Park. There goes Tom Webb. He is actually now in fourth position. He managed to get himself ahead of David Shaw that time through, whose number 25 Porsche seems to be dropping down through the order at the moment. So the number 113 Lamborghini of Tom Webb is up into fourth. Up into fifth comes Ed Peed now, has taken over the number 24 Greystone McLaren. Ross Wiley, who is now on board the McLaren Can-Am car, is up into sixth and leads Group GTO. And I think David Shaw was a later car to pit, and that's why his Porsche's settled itself back down into seventh position now. Greg Caton up the inside of Benny Simonson to take a place away and put a lap on that Ferrari. So that's everybody up to what I think 9th position now, is probably up to and including 9th that's been placed a lap down. And this fight here, the two Ginettas, that is going to be for second in the group. So the number 118 Ginetta is currently going to be in the hands of Townsend, and that is James Townsend, but he's coming under enormous pressure from Aaron Scott, who is the pro that's taken over the car that was driven in the early stages of the race. The number 80 car will go through of Craig Wilkins, but it's Aaron Scott that's now taken over. I think we can hand downstairs to Michelle, who's managed to catch up with John Dillon after a fantastic stint.
Yes, I am, Mark. I'm down here in the pits, and I'm here with John Dillon. Oh, my goodness me. Talk about the pressure.
Yeah, it was a bit, I mean, the start, I thought I could undercut Seamus into the first turn, because obviously I was on the outside, but he covered it off. And then, yeah, we were away, and then it was bumper-to-bumper action. But I was pressurising him. I think I was a little bit quicker than him. But the difficulty here around Donington is hard to overtake, especially in this infield section. But I kept on his bumper. Traffic obviously emerged. You know, he got through it a little bit quicker, but then I caught him again on the fastest lap of the race on the end of the stint. And yeah, he drove really well. And I think times like that, unless the driver makes a mistake, you know, you're going to struggle. You know, and he didn't. Fair play to him, he didn't make any mistakes. I obviously kept it on the track as well. I think a couple of more laps, maybe not, you know, but then I had to pit and Phil's took over now and hopefully he'll keep the pressure on and if Greg catches him up, we'll see, but I think we should be away now. And never say never.
Absolutely, never say never. Brilliant, well done. Fantastic driving from John. And like he said, never say never. There's still all to play for. Mark, it's back to you to see what's happening.
Yeah, great to catch up with the driver down there in the pit lane. Great stint from John Dillon. And as I said, John didn't really allude to it, but the race was always going to come to the Lamborghini because the Porsche, as long as John Dillon sat on the coattails of Seamus Jennings, when the pit stop opens, that Porsche was always going to have to stop for an extra 10 seconds, so they were always going to grab the lead of the race through the pit cycle. And now, with a bit of traffic last time through, Greg Caton in the Porsche was about half a second quicker than Phil Quaife, but that was only down to traffic on that lap, and I think on this lap, Phil Quaife again has got a little bit of traffic to deal with, so again, the gap might be coming down, but it's 14 seconds at the moment, so Phil Quaife can now just use all of that experience he's got driving a range of different sports cars over the years, just to make sure that he keeps the gap where he wants it, and of course he's always got a little bit of traffic between himself and the Porsche. So up towards Redgate Corner they will go. This is the Group GTB Nick Phelps Porsche looking to try and weave its way through. There comes now Greg Caton in second position. The relative gap is down again, it's come down by a further second, but that's only traffic, that's all. Greg Caton is in clear air at the moment, whereas Phil Quaife has got cars to deal with, so the gap is always going to diminish, but as soon as Greg Caton catches the traffic, the gap should work its way back in favour of Phil Quaife once more. Now, there is one car that's dived for the pit lane and was running inside the top 10, and that's the number 41 Lamborghini. Tim Morley has brought that car into the pit lane, and I think that might be for some sort of stop-go penalty. Yes, it was a stop-go penalty for that car. That can only potentially, I would have thought, be to do with the fact that its pit stop was a little bit too short, so they're having to add the time on that it missed while stationary, but you don't just add the time on it missed while stationary, you've got to decelerate back down to the pit lane speed limit and accelerate up again, so you do lose a fair chunk of time if you don't quite get the pit stop right, but it needs to be the same for everybody, and if it's not quite right and doesn't meet the regulations, you've got to, I'm afraid, bite the bullet and accept the penalty that's coming your way. So now Tim Morley will look to press on again at the wheel of that car. It's been good to see Tim in the championship this weekend. He's been mega quick, to say the least. So let's just run you down through the top 10 at the moment. 61, Phil Quaife leads. 33, Greg Caton second. This car here, number 9, Warren Gilbert is third, but leads Group GTC. Fourth at the moment is 113, which is Tom Webb after a stunning drive. Fifth is number 24, which is Ed Peed. And sixth is going to be Ross Wiley, the number 28 car. Seventh place is 25, David Shaw. Eighth place is the Group GTB leading Porsche, the number 35 car of Dino Zamparelli now, who's taken over. And ninth place is number 56, which is Benny Simonson, who is now on board the Ferrari. Completing the top 10 is the car that's just dived for its stop-go penalty, Tim Morley. And I think that will probably mean he'll drop outside of the top 10, and it should bring the Group GTH leading car, number 74, of Ben Barker now into the top 10. Other class leaders outside of the top 10, leading Group GTA is at the moment Simon Orange, and I think that probably gives you all of the group leaders that we have currently. So Warren Gilbert, 9.3 seconds to the good over Tom Webb, but there goes the Lamborghini. Watch out for the light blue Lamborghini in the background of the shot in a few moments' time. There it comes now, and at the moment that light blue car of Tom Webb is being hounded by Ed Peed's GT3 McLaren. That will be for position, but even if the McLaren gets through, it still keeps Tom Webb second in the group. Craig Wilkins, an interested spectator, watching down there, having done a good old stint at the wheel of the number 80 Scott Sport prepared Ginetta G55 Super Cup car. Out of the old hairpin has already got Warren Gilbert and up towards McLean's corner. Now this is the car that is leading Group GTC in terms of this race, leading Group GTC in terms of the championship, and Warren driving solo this weekend whilst his regular co-driver Jensen Lunn is unavailable. as I've mentioned a few times over the course of this weekend, had a fairly major operation earlier on this week, and we all continue to wish Jensen well with his recovery. But Warren has done a mega job, and hats off to Jensen for letting Warren drive the car solo. Jensen is the owner of the car, and Warren is the hired hand as such and prepares the car, but has done a really, really good job of adding to the championship tally. And at the moment, the gap between himself and that car there, Tom Webb is coming down, but Tom Webb has had clear air. He's not had traffic to deal with. He's now meeting the traffic, and that traffic that he's got to get through and past is going to be Jordan Albert, who used to race single-seaters in the BRDC Formula 4 Championship as it was. Simon Orange, Jordan Albert and Tom Webb all together. Simon Orange stays out of harm's way. I'm not surprised at the wheel of the Group GTA leading Ginetta. In a straight line, Tom Webb will pick off Jordan Albert's McLaren, and now when he watches in his mirrors, he'll see a car that he passed a few laps earlier when it was in the hands of Paul Bailey. The Group GTO McLaren Can-Am is now right up on his tailpipes once more. The car of Ross Wiley is right behind him. The Scotsman, having taken over the McLaren, is looking to try and thrust its way through and ahead of Tom Webb, who runs a little bit wide, coming out to the old hairpin, and might be enough for the Group GTO McLaren to sweep its way through and past. Yep, so through goes the Group GTO leading McLaren. We lost Richard Chamberlain, Group GTO, earlier on in the weekend. We lost the Steve Burgess and Ben Dim at Radical, also prior to this racing Group GTO. So the McLaren, as Paul Bailey suggested, you know, motor racing is all about finishing. To finish first you've got to finish, and that's exactly what the McLaren has done all weekend. It's kept its nose clean, it's stayed out of trouble, and the beautiful looking car, looks fantastic in its orange livery, is now going to be up into 5th position, and that doesn't detract at all from what has been a stellar drive from 113 Tom Webb again. There is a reward for driver of the day, a separate prize that's given out, and certainly with a few other names that I can think of, Tom Webb's would be in there as well for driver of the day. There's also a driver of the weekend award that gets awarded in the GT Cup. Quite where that's going, I haven't got a clue, because we have had some really good drives over the course of this weekend. Some from some of the more experienced drivers, and some for those that are in even for the first time in the GT Cup this weekend. So a flash of lights from Ross Wiley, through and past what will be the number 44 John Whitehouse driven McLaren it will go. Now Warren Gilbert has got caught by the GT3 Ed Peed driven McLaren 720S GT3 now. Now this is going to be a GT3 car trying to get past a Group GTC car, so Warren Gilbert should let it go. Yeah, absolutely. Leave the door open, let the car go through. Warren would ideally like an overall podium, but it's where you finish in the group that matters. There's no extra points for finishing on the podium in 3rd place if you still win Group GTC, compared to there is if you finish just off the podium in 4th place but still win the group. So Warren doing a sensible thing, letting the car go, and even if that orange McLaren catches him in the remaining 5 minutes, I think Warren will do the same again, because the McLaren is in Group GTO, the number 9 Lamborghini is in Group GTC. So Tom Webb, another position gain. Greg Caton, fastest lap of the race last time through for the Porsche, 1 minute 29.387. Really good lap from Greg Caton. How does that compare to the laps we've had so far this weekend? Well, we had Morgan Tilmock do a 1 minute 29.7, but he's an am in reality. We saw Marcus Clutton do a 1 minute 28.5 in yesterday's pit stop race, and Sam Neary do a 1 minute 28.1. So the slightly cooler temperatures perhaps not working in favour of, or conducive to, quicker lap times now, as Greg Caton is about to work his way through and past the Group GTB Marcos Mantis, the top catch prepared car of Neil Huggins, whilst the race leader is threading his way on the exit of Redgate Corner. So on to lap number 30 now for Phil Quaife, with 3 3/4 minutes of the race still to go. Down through the old hairpin, potentially on course for a first overall win for the Scottsport Lamborghini in the 2021 GT Cup Championship season. They've had group wins in the past, John Dillon and Phil Quaife. Have they? No, they haven't. They've had second places in the race, but they've never had a group win even. So even when a group GTO car has won a race, which we have had over the course of this weekend, we have not had a group win or an overall win for the number 61 Lamborghini. They've had seconds. Brands Hatch in one of the sprint races there. We saw Snetterton in the pit stop race. Both of the pit stop races at Snetterton, the car finished in second. And Silverstone last time out in one of the sprint races and one of the pit stop races, it finished in second place. It's had a third, it's had a few fourths, it's had a couple of fifths, it's had a sixth as well. But the top step of the podium has so far eluded John Dillon, who wipes his brow. I'm sure not with worry, but more to do with the hard stint he put in as he chats to his fellow Scott Sports driver, which is Craig Wilkins. Now, Phil Quaife up the inside, that's to put a lap on the 6th place car of Tom Webb. So Tom Webb, remember, started from the pit lane. The two Lamborghinis look the same, but it's a GT3 spec car that goes through and ahead of a Super Trofeo spec machine. And as they now tumble their way downhill, Phil Quaife should be on to his penultimate lap this time through. And for Phil Quaife and John Dillon, this is a long overdue win. Phil, who's done a chunk of racing in British GT in the past. Blancpain, we've seen him out in the Dubai and the Barcelona 24 hours. He was the Radical Enduro champion in the UK back in 2006. He was the champion of the Porsche Carrera Cup, the Pro-Am section of that back in 2006 as well. Whereas for John Dillon, he's raced in GT Cup before. He was the Sprint Cup champion last year, was John Dillon, and the champion in Group GTC. He's done a chunk of Ferrari racing, he's done British GT, he's done European Ferrari Challenge as well in the past as John. So the two of them have got plenty of experience, but Phil is absolutely the pro driver. John has got a business to run on a day-to-day basis, and therefore this is, well, the fun, but the very serious fun. And for John Dillon and Phil Quaife, there's just one further tour of the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit between themselves and their first outright win of the championship season. The car that's ahead of them is the 5th place car, Warren Gilbert, who may just about stay on the lead lap. Warren certainly looking as though he's destined for a win in Group GTC. Greg Caton is too far behind now. He is 12.8 seconds adrift of the race leader. Now remember, that Porsche did stop for an extra 10 seconds, didn't it? So it could have been a very close race had it not have been for the success seconds, but that's what the success seconds are intended to do. It's to shuffle the pack. And of course, when we head to Snetterton for the next weekend of racing, it will be the John Dillon and Phil Quaife car that will pick up the maximum success seconds, 20 success seconds for winning its group. And should we see Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton back out, they will have the advantage because they'll be stopping for a lesser period of time. Big smiles all round. John Dillon chatting to engineer Simon Lansbury, who has been an engineer with Scott Sport for a good number of years now and works on not just the more modern, more contemporary GT machinery that they prepare, but also some of the wonderful historic Formula 1 cars and Group C cars that Aaron Scott and the team prepare over there in Sutton Coldfield at the workshop. But one corner to go, the clock has ticked to 0. Phil Quaife works his way up towards turn number 12, Goddard's, for the final time. The clock is at 0, and it is looking as though it is going to be a win, and the first win for them in round 20 of the GT Cup Championship for 2021. The Scott Sport Lamborghini of John Dillon and Phil Quaife claim the win. That goes down well with the Scott Sport crew. Big smiles all round there in the garage. Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton will come home in 2nd place at the wheel of the Porsche. There's a big flash of the lights from the McLaren behind, because that means that Josh Jackson and Michael O'Brien will be finishing 3rd in Group GTH as it was in the end. We should see Ed Peed over the start-finish line shortly at the wheel of the McLaren to finish in what will be 3rd position. Everybody else feeding their way through. Benny Simonson over the start-finish line. That's a Group GTC car. Here comes Simon Orange. That will be a win in Group GTA, I think, for Simon Orange, the Orange Ginetta through. And then we should see Nick Phelps come through. Yeah, the Porsche in the hands of Nick Phelps will win Group GTB, the number 35 car with its blue and its pink flashes to it, through to finish 9th overall and claim the win in Group GTB. Who is going to win Group GTH? That will be, by the look of things, the Porsche of Charles Clark and Ben Barker that will claim top honours in Group GTH, but that car is still as yet to take the checkered flag at the moment. And we're still awaiting the 3rd place car through. Here it comes now. Ed Peed over the start-finish line to finish in 3rd position. Andre Borodin having done the hard work in the early stages. Ross Wiley brings the McLaren over the start-finish line to finish in 4th place. And here, with a big skid coming out of Goddard, is Ben Barker weaving from side to side. That is another group win for that car. It claimed its first group win of the weekend earlier on today, and Charles Clark, partnered with Ben Barker in this race, come through to finish in the 11th place overall, but claim the win in Group GTH. So fantastic stuff. Great way to bring the curtain down on a wonderful weekend of racing for the GT Cup Championship. All of the cars will feed their way back in towards the pit lane area. And, well, it doesn't give the teams long either to re-prep the cars ahead of the final weekend of racing over the course of the 2nd and 3rd of October at Snetterton on the 300 circuit for rounds 21, 22, 23 and 24 of the championship season. A round of applause for John Dillon, who's already out of the race overalls and clapping the hired hands, Phil Quaife, and they will be really, really pleased with that. We might be able to gauge a bit of reaction down there in the pit lane. We'll also be able to confirm the results with you as well very, very shortly. And let's just bring you through the results then for the pit stop race here at Donington Park. The win, the first of the season, goes the way of John Dillon and Phil Quaife, with Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton in 2nd place, and Andre Borodin and Ed Plead completing the top 3. 4th, but the win in Group GTO goes the way of Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley, with the win in Group GTC going the way of the car that finished in 5th place, Warren Gilbert. Great drive from Tom Webb from the pit lane, sees him finish in 6th place, with Roy Millington and Benny Simonson in 7th place. David Shaw in 8th place, and 9th place goes the way of the winning Group GTB, Nick Phelps and Dino Zamparelli, with James Simons and Tim Morley completing the top 10. In 11th place, it was a Group GTH win for Charles Clark and Ben Barker, with Tom Rawlings and Mo Ritson in 12th place, and Josh Jackson and Michael O'Brien in 11th place. Mark Hopton and Adam Carroll were 12th, ahead of Tim Jocker and Jordan Albert. Then it was Steve Rushton and John Whitehouse, ahead of the Mason and Lancaster combo that finished in 17th place. 18th place was the winner in Group GTA, Simon Orange, ahead of Philip Carter and the returning Michael Broadhurst. And it was Alex Stevenson and James Kellett that wrapped up the top 20. In 21st place, it was Rod and Stuart Lynn. In 22nd place was Craig Wilkins and Aaron Scott, ahead of the Fox Motorsport pairing there in 23rd position. And it was Patrick Collins and Russ Lindsay in 24th, ahead of Charlotte Gilbert and Neil Huggins, Stephen Walton and Chris Hart, Cole Cavers and Benji Hetherington. And those were the last of the finishers. From there on backwards, David Holloway and co. all ran into problems in the final race here at Donington Park. So that's the final results. Let's hand you back downstairs for the final time this weekend to Michelle.
Thanks so much, Mark, as always, for your fantastic commentary. And yes, that is it. Well, John Dillon's going home, a very happy man from Donington, and well deserved too. As Mark was saying, it's been another weekend of fantastic racing here in the GT Cup Championship, but there's only 2 more weeks to wait until the grand finale. We will be rolling in to Snetterton on the 2nd and 3rd of October, where our winners will all be crowned. I do hope you can join us for that. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on the social media for all the latest information. GT Cup on Facebook and on Instagram. I've been Michelle Livings. From all of us here at the GT Cup Championship and at Donington, it's goodbye.